And welcome back, everyone. Today I played in the 10th round of the FIDE Candidates tournament here in Madrid against Alireza Firouzja. Now, before we jump into the game, I was asked a question some months back on my stream about what would happen to Alireza in the Candidates. Now, half jokingly, as this was before the FIDE Grand Prix, I said that I would win the FIDE Grand Prix, I would play in the Candidates, and I would beat Alireza. So you guys will be able to see that clip on our channel, of course, if you haven't already. But anyway, I had the white pieces against Alireza. So without further ado, let's jump right into the game. So I start by playing e4 here. After e4, Alireza plays c5. I play knight to f3. He goes d6 here. And now I play the move d4. And now he plays pawn takes pawn. Sorry, you guys, I think the audio was muted for a second for the move, so you don't hear the pieces for the first couple moves. That's life, working through it on the fly. So c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6. I play knight c3, and Alireza returns to the Najdorf defense. Now, he had not played it since his loss against Jan Nepomniachtchi earlier in the tournament, but I still expected him to play this because it's what he prepared for the event, and more importantly, he won his last round game, so he's feeling very confident. So I play bishop e3. Now I get the move e5, knight to f3, and now he plays the move knight to c6 here. A little bit of a surprise. The main moves here are either bishop e7 or queen c7, but he plays knight c6. Now I go bishop c4 after a bit of a think, and he plays this move bishop e6, and now I played knight d5. Now, I don't remember the exact position of the game that I had against Alireza in the World Rapid in 2019 in Moscow, but it was something very similar. Now, I believe it was something out of this order with bishop c4, bishop e6, bishop b3, knight c6, and I did go on to lose that game. So I don't remember the exact position or how it occurred, but it was something that was on my mind in this game after this move knight c6, because when I played bishop c4 and he blitzed out bishop e6, I thought that after bishop b3, bishop e7, we would likely transpose to something similar to that game, and I don't have good memories from that specific game that we played in Moscow. So I choose to play knight d5. Now, initially, I thought this move was playable because I had seen it played in other variations, but most importantly, it didn't look like it was bad, and I knew that it was going to get Alireza out of his preparation. So I played this move knight d5. Now, after a bit of a think, he plays this move rook c8. Now, here, I thought for about 25 minutes, trying to play something creative. I really wanted to play something like bishop b6, queen d7, and something like takes and bishop b3, but I concluded that after knight e7 and d5 here, or even ideas like queen 6 hitting the bishop on b6 and the pawn on e4, that it's just not quite there. The other idea that I really wanted to play to try be a little bit memey was to play knight g5 here. Now, the reason that I didn't play this is after takes knight d5. Initially, I thought I could trade, but after queen a5, let's say we trade the queens here. This is not really fun. It's just an equal endgame. Not much is happening. And additionally, I also wanted to make this line with e5 work, but after queen a5, c3, knight e7, I wanted to do something like knight e4, attacking the pawn on d6, but after knight d5, queen g4, rook d8, playing something like rook d1 or even castles. At any rate, I thought this was something that in blitz game might work out very well for me, but objectively, black should have some way to consolidate the extra pawn here with something like takes, castles, and then I don't know if it's like queen e6, queen e6, and then some bishop e7. Again, in a blitz game, this would look very scary for white. After something like queen g3, ideas like knight g5, weak center. But in a classical game of chess, you can't play such speculative lines. So in this position, I choose to play the move knight takes f6, and I was expecting Alireza to play queen takes f6, and after bishop takes, queen takes, castles, bishop e7, c3, I thought that after castles, it's a very dry position, not much play here, maybe queen d3, and then f5, and I think black is completely fine. White shouldn't really be worse either, but it should be very balanced. But when Alireza started thinking for a bit here, I began to realize that he was not going to take with the queen, and he was getting optimistic, and he decided to take with the pawn. Now, this is a fairly serious mistake. Again, in retrospect, it's easy to understand why during the game. I think it's a perfectly logical attempt. But the problem is that in the long term, unlike, say, the Sveshnikov Sicilian, black is going to have trouble opening up the center. So I played bishop b3 here, and Alireza plays knight e7. Now, the line during the game that I calculated that I was sort of expecting him to play was knight a5, but now after bishop d5, knight c4 castles, there's this long line that I saw with knight b2, queen b1, knight c4, queen takes not knight c4, bishop d5, takes, knight c4, queen b7, and I thought that after f5, queen takes a6 with the idea of rook b1 and bishop g5, white should be better, although I wasn't 100% sure what was going on. Alireza played knight e7, and now I was very happy because I knew that after I castled here, there was really little to no danger and white should be better. Now, one thing we talk about a lot in chess, and I'll keep going through the game for a few more moves, is that we reach this position after queen e2. Now, pawn structures are very important because when you play certain openings and you learn the pawn structures and the piece play around them, it really informs you when you don't play that opening, but you have a very similar pawn structure. So one thing I want to point out is that this structure is very similar to the Sveshnikov Sicilian, and I actually put this in here so I could show you guys the pawn structure. So there is a line in the Sveshnikov, which we'll go through very, very quickly here, where black plays knight e7, and then you get this position where black ends up with the pawns on f7, f6, e5, and a queen on d5. Now, obviously, it's different because here you have light square bishops versus dark square bishops, but at any rate, it's a similar pawn structure. Now, the point that I want to make here after knight e3, queen e6 is that black always has ideas like castling on the queen side in these lines. Additionally, f5 is supported by the knight and the queen here. So if we go back to the game, to this position, sorry, it wasn't this position, right here after queen e2, we have this setup, but the problem for black is that with the knight on f3, you're not really able to push the pawns in the center. Additionally, with the rook on c8, you never have ideas to castle queenside, so your king is going to be stuck in the center, or you're going to have to castle kingside, and again, with the inability to push these pawns in the center, white should be clearly better here. So Alireza, back here, Alireza takes on b3, does not play d5, because after takes knight d5, queen e2, I have ideas like rook d1. If black ever trades a knight for the bishop, now there's serious problems here, because I can go knight h4, and these double pawns are very ugly, and I have an outpost on f5 for my knight. So he trades first, plays d5, and now I take here. He takes, I go queen e2, of course. I want to keep queens on the board here because of the compromised pawn structure. So Alireza plays knight f5, and now I play rook f d1. He goes queen c6, and I go c4 right away. Very simple plan here, which is that I want to create the double stack, maybe even the triple stack, with like something, for example, say I make some random moves, rook c8. And let's say I play rook d1, rook c7, maybe even get a triple stack here. This is also known as Aliekin's gun, and this would be very dangerous. So I have a very clear-cut plan after playing c4 to follow up with rook d5. So now we get bishop g7. I play the move rook to d5, castles, I do the double stack. And the problem for black here is quite simple. There's no way to push these pawns in the center, so the double pawns are not really an advantage, they're a weakness. And additionally, the queen side, not much is happening, and I control the only open file here. So all the trumps are in my favor. So Alireza plays rook e8. Now I play this move h3. Now what I should have probably done is played g4, but during the game I missed this variation of the computer show, which is after knight e7, rook d6. If black plays queen e4, I have the brilliant move knight to g5, guarding the pawn on g4 with the queen. If black captures back with the pawn, I go f3, and the queen is actually trapped here. There are no good squares. He'll have to give up the queen with either queen c6 or queen g6, after which I capture with my rook. So I probably should have played this, but I didn't see the idea, so I play h3 first to reinforce. So for example, if I play a random move like rook b8, g4, just to illustrate, knight e7, rook d6, now queen e4 is no longer attacking the pawn on g4 because the pawn on h3 supports it. So it's a very pragmatic move. I create the Lufthansa for the king. I create the air as well, so there are no patented ice skaters. I have king h2, or as we say in common chess tongues, there are no back rank checkmates because I have the square for the king. So it's a dual function move, create the square, but also support the pawn push to g4. And now we get the move b5 played by Alireza, and here I play this move c5 after a very minimal think. Now the reason I play this move is because throughout the game I was looking for clear-cut plans, trying to play simple plans and not think too much because I felt that I was already much better, and I thought that after c5 the idea of getting a protected passed pawn in an endgame would be very, very strong. Now oddly enough, c5 is a mistake. What I should have done is I should have played bishop c5, and the reason I should have played this move is because now I kind of dominate this knight. The knight really has no good squares, and I'm going to go g4, knight h4, knight f5, and the computer says it's actually already close to winning. However, I thought c5 was more logical because I want to create the protected passed pawn, and now Alireza makes a big mistake. He plays bishop f8. Now the computer says that after a5, black is still okay, but after something like queen c2, queen e6, queen e4, it feels very, very unpleasant. Again, I have knight h4, I have g4 ideas, and it seems like for a human at least this should be good. For example, sample line is knight e7, rook d7, queen b3, and now something like knight h4 to go knight f5 again, and it feels good. But the computer actually says that after f5 here, black can now start getting the central pawns rolling, and he should be okay. So a5 would have been the best move, but again, Alireza at this point already getting low on time, already I think very pessimistic about his chances in this game. He misses this. Instead he plays bishop f8, and now once I get the protected passed pawn with b4, it's very, very hard for black to do anything here. So Alireza basically decides to go for it with knight d4. Now, I don't fault this decision. I think it's probably the best choice considering the time situation and generally speaking just how hard it is to find a move, because after knight d4 I have to sacrifice the exchange here with knight takes knight, queen takes, and knight f5, but black's moves become a little bit easier. Either black is going to be fine or he is going to get checkmated, but there's really no in between here, and so I actually thought this decision made the most sense from Alireza. That being said, there is another chess maxim we have, or as I've said during the Botez Gambit speed run, and this is the misnomer, which is that a knight on f5 is worth at least a queen. Now that is not the actual saying. The saying is that a knight on f5 is worth at least a pawn, according to the famous world chess champion Garry Kasparov. So this knight on f5 is very dangerous for a couple of reasons. First of all, black has no way to remove it. All the pawns are right around the knight, so you can't remove this knight on f5. And additionally, the king is very open here, so I have ideas like queen h5 and queen g4. And the knight is just, it's a jumbo pony. It really is just a jumbo pony here. So after knight f5, Alireza plays queen e4. Now in this position, I use a bit of time here and I play this move queen h5. And Alireza plays rook d8. Now again, if I have unlimited time here, I can sort of conceptualize a checkmate. So one thing that you try to do sometimes is when there isn't a whole lot happening on the board like here, like it's very stable, there aren't really pawns everywhere, it's a very balanced position, is you look for concepts. So for example, if black were to just take forever, one of the basic concepts I have is do the rook lift here, and eventually something like bishop h6 followed by rook g3, and there has to be a checkmate on the g file eventually. So when I keep that in mind here, I became very optimistic because there's not really a whole lot happening. There's only one open file. Black can't really do much with the pawns. Really, even a move like a5, it doesn't really threaten anything, just rook d7, and the game is over. So there really isn't much going on. So now it's finding the right concept to checkmate the black king. Also with the pawn on h3 and the square for the king, there are no back rank checkmates here. So now we get rook e d8 played by Alireza. Now I go rook a1. Again, with such material on the board, I don't want to trade because if I only have the queen, the knight, and the bishop, it's not going to be easy to win this position, although even this is probably still better because of the protected pass pawn on c5. So after rook d8, I go rook a1, again conceptualizing that I assume at some point I have rook a3 and a rook lift to g3. So rook c6 is played by Alireza here. Again, there isn't really much black can do. If you take on b4, I can even go rook takes a6, and if you go check, king h2, rook d1, it might look a little bit scary on first glance, but there's actually no threat at all, so I can go rook a7, and when you check me on h1, I quietly go up to g3. The king is very safe with the pawns around it, and I'm just going to checkmate you on f7 and h7 in the next couple of moves. So Alireza plays rook c6, guarding the pawns on f6 and a6 potentially, but the problem here is, as I said, now it's about a concept and finding the checkmate. So I play bishop h6 here. Now it took me a little while to find this move because initially I wasn't sure after takes and king g7 where the win was because I saw rook a3, and if black plays queen g6, of course rook g3 just wins the game. But I also thought black could maybe go f5, and now if I go rook g3, check, there's rook g6, and suddenly black is fine. And after knight f5, king h8, I didn't see a forced checkmate. Fortunately, after using a little bit of time, I did spot the win here, which is that after rook a3, if black plays f5, I can play the very quiet in-between move queen g5 check, creating the classic right triangle. And now if black blocks with the rook, I play knight takes pawn check. If queen takes, I just take the queen, and on rook d1, I have king h2, which is why I played h3 in the first place. And if black doesn't take the knight and he plays like king h8, I guess let's say king f8, I just go queen takes d8, which is checkmate one move before black can checkmate me on g2. So once I saw this whole idea, I knew that bishop h6 had to be the right move. And now Alireza plays king h8. Again, only try here, trying to sidestep any checkmate patterns. There are some other lines that I can show, which is say black plays like queen b4 here, and I go rook a3 as an example. Let's say black plays... what was the line that I saw here? I saw some fancy way to make a checkmate. Let's say black goes check, king h2, and rook d1. I guess this one's easy too. What was the mate? I saw some checkmate here that I wanted to show you guys. But it's not popping in my head right away. There's some way that I give up the rook. Actually, I think it was something, just to illustrate the point, something like this even is possible because I have check and I have this beautiful checkmate with the queen, the bishop, and the knight. King g8 runs into mate, and of course bishop g7 also runs into checkmate as well. So when I saw that there were even these ideas like mate, I knew that these ideas like queen b4 would not be working. So after bishop h6, Alireza plays king h8. Now I go rook a3 here. Now we get the move queen takes b4. Again, nothing black can really do here because the bishop covers the f4 square, and I just want to go rook g3, queen f7, and mate. So if black plays like a5 and takes, for example, I go here, and there's just no way to stop the checkmate on g8 and g7. Additionally, black has a dead rook on c6 that's not in the game. You can't put it on d6, so the rook is just doing absolutely nothing here. So black really has no way to defend. So here Alireza plays queen b4. He was getting very low on time here already. He had like a minute left, and he was shaking his head, obviously. So I knew the end was near. Now the computer says you can try queen c2 with the idea of queen d1 check. So if I go rook g3, there's check, and now black actually would probably win the game here. But I can just sidestep very quietly with king h2, and after queen takes f2 here, again, I just go rook f3, queen c2, and now I think rook g3, and it's just overwhelming. So there isn't really much black can do here. Alireza plays queen takes b4, allowing a beautiful finish here because now I can trade on f8. And now I go queen h6, threatening checkmate in 1. He goes rook g8 to stop it. And now I play the beautiful move rook to g3. And mate is simply unstoppable. If black plays rook c8, I just trade. King takes gets mated by queen g7. If you go rook c8 to guard, now I can play queen takes f6, which leads to checkmate as well. So this jumbo pony just is too much here. If black plays rook g6, obviously I just swap, mate anyway. And so Alireza plays rook takes rook. I take with the pawn, and here he resigns in view of the fact that the only moves he has are queen e1, but after king h2, again, just no way to stop checkmate in 1. And if you take on c5 with check, again, I go king h2, not king h1, because then black would have queen c1, creating another right triangle and winning the game, 90 degrees, of course. But after king h2, there's no check. And again, I'm just mating on g7 next move. Black has no way to stop it. So after f takes g3, Alireza resigns the game here, and I move to a +1 score, a huge victory for me. Obviously, it's really nice after that clip, which everyone saw on Twitch in November of 2021, to actually fulfill the prophecy and beat Alireza is really, really nice. But more importantly, it gets me back within maybe a hair's distance of catching on if a couple things break my way in the next couple of rounds. But at any rate, winning a game is always great. And I moved to +1, so I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. I will get a double white tomorrow. I'm going to be playing against Richard Rapport, so I will come back, do a recap after that game. But I hope you guys have enjoyed it and keep up all the positive vibes, and we just keep moving forward.